Good evening, LBE viewers and supporters and family. First of all, um, we're at February 5th of 2025, and so we wish you happy Black History Month. And I always like to remind us that Black History Month is American history. So it is a time for us to celebrate and acknowledge every one of us, to acknowledge the accomplishments and the resilience of Black, Afro Caribbean, African American, and Africans and people of African descent all around the world. I am so excited this evening to introduce a very dear friend and colleague of mine, Mr. Pete Yanka. And he's my colleague, so we both, I think I can say, have the honor and privilege of serving here at Northern Arizona University. And Mr. Yanka is the director for Student Life Experiences, which sits under or in the Office of Veteran and Military Services. And so when we decided that the Lived Black Experience Project wanted to cover this topic, I was like, I know the perfect person who can talk about this and enlighten us. And I always like to say that the Lived Black Experience Project is one that that is has the mission of enlightening, of educating, of inspiring, of setting the record straight on different topics that not only apply to being a person of African descent, but we are all about the people. And this is definitely a topic that the LBE felt like everyone could gain something from Mr. Yanka's knowledge. And I've had the privilege of working with him for several years now. And I just really admire um, his grace, his poise, his respect for our country, for our veterans, which he works for and with every day here on campus. And so I could go on and on because I really admire him, and he knows that. And I'm just so pleased to have him here this evening. So, Mr. Yanka, I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to give you the screen. And if you would prompt me, I'm happy to take you, work with you on moving through our PowerPoint presentation this evening. And thank you so much for being here.
Well, Dr. Bernadine Lewis, thank you. Just an amazing colleague, and even more than that, an amazing person. And so, thank you. It is truly an honor to be with you all here tonight to talk about our flag, and what does that mean, and how do we provide appropriate reverence, and what are the various aspects of that. And so, it truly is an honor to be able to be here to speak with you all and share kind of what I see, and kind of through my research and working with the various communities that I work with, share what I've come to know, and looking forward to this evening. So thank you for having me here. Wanted to go over a quick uh, overview of what I'm going to be touching base on. First of all, I wanted to give a little bit of background about me, just so that you have an idea of the lens in which I look at our flag, and the importance of it. And so I'll share a little bit about that with you all. Um, I also want to talk about common images that are out there, and kind of what what we see, and is it appropriate, isn't it appropriate, and kind of wrestle with that a little bit. And then I'm going to be talking about flag etiquette. Well, what is that, and what is some of the history about flag etiquette and what are some of the stances out there, and also talk about the legal aspects and guidelines. Can uh, what does that look like over the course of the last 50 years or so? It's changed and evolved for sure. And then at the end, I'll be providing some, I'm hoping, helpful resources if you wanted to look a little bit further into that. And so uh, that's the setup or structure for tonight's talk. And so looking forward to jumping right in. So, uh, Bernadine, you mind? There you go. Thank you. So, wanted to talk about the flag to me and what that means. I grew up in eastern Ohio, and literally one county over was official Appalachia. Also, within kind of the Rust Belt of Ohio in the Midwest, that was my background where I grew up. Um, One of the things that I appreciated growing up there, there wasn't a very challenging socioeconomic area, but yet there was always a pride in country, and the flag was something to be proud of. Not a perfect country, but our country. And this notion of a more perfect union was something that uh, was shared with me early on within my family, and with each passing day, I believe that we have that opportunity each day. So where I grew up was important, and both my dad and my brother served in the military, so really was a family endeavor, and having family members who have served, and like I'm assuming a number of you having either served or have family, it's deep in the family roots. The thing that I also wanted to share is that Memorial Day was a very special day for me growing up. I didn't understand it early on. My birthday was always around Memorial Day, and I thought, wow, this is so cool. In elementary school, thinking, I get a 3 day weekend every time my birthday rolls around. How cool is that? It was always connected with my dad bringing out the flag for Memorial Day. Um, And so, anybody who knows anything about the Midwest, the winters are typically gray, and the skies are very, very seldom blue. But I remember images growing up, blue skies, the flag flying, and my dad having a reverence for it. I didn't understand it until I got older. Uh, Allergies. The Then 9/11 hit, and I had a flag at home, and I didn't have a flagpole. But on 9/11, I got out the flag, climbed out my second floor window onto the roof, and with no flagpole, I had a yellow metal mop pole. Screwed that to the side of the house, or the townhouse where I was living, hung the flag, and ever since then, I've had a flag at home that we fly. Um, my apologies. I knew this was going to be a little bit challenging, but yeah. The experiences that I've had in my work life have really also influenced it. I've been in higher education. I'm halfway through my third decade, and all the positions that I've had, I've worked with the military connected students in some capacity, either through advising, student activities or events, or my current role where I'm accountable for serving the community here at NAU, and it truly has been a blessing. It is the most diverse student community within the university, and it truly is a gift each and every day to see the diversity of experience, the diversity of views, and just all coming together. And when I see the flag, it really represents the diversity coming together as one. It truly is a gift. So that's a little bit of a lens in which I see our flag. And so with that, wanted to shift gears and start talking about images that are out there. And when we're seeing those, what are those? So I don't know about you all, but when I see this, I'm like, wow, these folks are all in, very patriotic. And is that appropriate? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So you all might see outfits like this and go, is that respectful or not? It's hard to say. And so we'll talk about the context of that. Next slide, please. These are items that are out there with representations of the flag. Is it something where, is that okay? Um, is that appropriate? Is that respectful? And it again, there's a lot of nuance with that, and so hopefully at the end of this, we have a little bit more context in which to look at these things and various perspectives out there that view these items. Next slide, please. There are a number of flags out there that take the image of our flag and are modified. Is that okay? Is that appropriate? Is that legal? Is that ethical? Um, it's it's nuanced for sure, and so it's one of those things where getting a chance to kind of talk through the history of how this country has viewed the flag a little bit this evening, I think hopefully will provide context on how we view things. Next slide, please. Now, I don't know about you all, but when I ran across this picture, I was like, wow, these folks are all in. Uh, Definitely, I can't even imagine how long it took to paint the house this way. Again, is this respectful? Is it not? How do we look at these things? And so again, context here, we're going to start talking a little bit about that. So when we when we're looking at these images, is it legal? Well, I want to start talking a little bit about that. So I wanted to share the next slide, which is basically a law that has been on the books. Title 4, United States Code, Chapter 1. The flag in 1947, there was a specific law established about care of the flag, use of the flag. And I wanted to lift some items there where it was a formal law within the District of Columbia. And so every image I just showed you is against the law. And uh, my apologies, it got cut off, but there was a monetary fee and also potential jail time for violating that. Now, this is within the District of Columbia, and so it was established within that realm that if you disrespected the flag with anything that I just showed you, you could be held liable, arrested, and fined and placed in jail. Now, that set kind of the tone for the rest of the nation. So there wasn't a lot of modification like we see today. So, but things started shifting a little bit. So in 1947, this was established. Uh, Next slide, please. Well, in 1968, there was a lot of contention, a lot of challenge within our country and with our flag in particular. Um, what was established through Congress at that time in 1968, there was a formal Flag Protection Act of 1968 established. So it took what I just shared with you that was restricted to Washington, D.C., and nationalized it. So throughout all 50 states, there was the reality that if somebody disrespected the flag, as I showed uh, through the examples of what was deemed inappropriate, folks could be fined. Folks could serve jail time for that. So, in this time where the Vietnam War was taking place, this Flag Protection Act was established. And some of the actual protests were from veterans who came back from Vietnam and who are protesting the war themselves. And so in 1968, this was established as a law of the land, so to speak, broadly. Next slide, please. Why was there such reverence? Why is it so powerful? I think a number of us have personal experiences in what the flag means to them. Absolutely. In each one of us, as we look at our flag, what does it say to us in general? Well, I want to share the next slide that one of the things in working with our military connected community is that there were lives lost. And I know we know that. And I wanted to share this slide because of these numbers of folks who were actually killed in battle. These are sons, daughters, husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, and aunts and uncles. And these folks aren't coming home because they sacrificed for us. This this doesn't even touch the number of folks who came back from battle and wrestled and passed either through suicide or war injuries. And so just the sheer volume of these numbers, I always want to include this out of reverence and respect to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for us. And so we have this backdrop of legal aspects. There are laws in the land, there are lives lost, and there's a lot of respect for the flag. But yet, some things have changed. What happened? Why are these images so much more popular or available or in the mainstream? So, what shifted? What changed? So, next slide, please. Some things that changed that came up. So, in 1968, the Flag Protection Act was established. Well, over 20 years later, there were some court findings that came up, so court cases that came to the Supreme Court. So in 1989, Texas versus Johnson, Greg Lee Johnson was convicted of burning the flag at the RNC of 1984 in Texas, and he was arrested. And so his case was brought before the Supreme Court. So it was really the first time that this law was challenged. And at that time, the Supreme Court found in favor of Mr. Johnson, and it violated his First Amendment right to protest and have desecration of the flag. That it was to criminalize that was unconstitutional because it violated the freedom of speech. And so it was a very tight vote. It was 5-4 within the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court ruled freedom of speech is supersedes the desecration of the flag. So that was in 1989. Well, in order to respond to that, Congress then developed a Flag Protection Act of 1989 to try to cover how the Supreme Court ruled so that it would be a desecration of the flag would be a crime. Well, the next year, 1990, United States versus Eichmann was another challenge. Mr. Eichmann burned the flag on the steps of DC, I believe is the House of Congress. And so he was arrested. And that very year, Again, a court case came in where the Supreme Court ruled in favor of freedom of speech. And so Mr. Eichmann did not serve jail time or was waived from that. So the Supreme Court in 1989 and then in 1990 really set a tone of freedom of speech and its importance. But for over 20 years, the United States had a very firm ruling of no, it's against the law and you will be punished for desecrating the flag. So I was looking at that and that was not that long ago. And so it's one of those challenges where a large number of folks would agree that it should be a crime, where a large number of folks also agree in freedom of speech. And so legally, you are able to burn a flag. Do I agree with that? Do I support that? I believe strongly in freedom of speech. And where that is and how folks treat our flag, it's hard for me because it is a respect thing. And so it poses a lot of nuances and challenges for me. Next slide, please. So we know about the history. We know how it has changed in the basically late 80s, early 90s, that things have shifted. And so the images of flags are much more common. Items in apparel that have representation of flags are very prominent. My children never had a space where it was illegal to do that. And so things have shifted and things have evolved. And so it poses a challenge for us. Legally, folks can do pretty much what they want to do. Ethically, I think the challenge is it really is a personal decision. Next slide. So for me, in my role, what I have seen in talking with the military connected community and serving them over the years, one of the things is to try to come from a place of respect and understanding. And what I have found is that one of the things that I can do to be respectful to our elders who believe strongly in not modifying the flag at all, and also knowing that there's a number of people who really embrace patriotism and imagery of the flag, and it's very commonplace. And so for me, I honor and respect the freedom of speech. I appreciate the imagery when folks are trying to connect with the flag in some capacity. And I also, within my role with the flag in particular, ensure that we are following appropriate flag etiquette to the best of my ability. And so I, full disclosure, have a sweatshirt that has the image of a flag. And when I wear it, I wear it with humble pride because it represents our flag. And so I will continue to wear those things, but I also want to respect our elders who have a different perspective of that. And I always want to make sure that they know I'm respectful of them. With the flag itself, I think in my role, I just wanted to share a couple things with you. If you notice, uh, I had a conversation with a number of our veterans a few years ago, and we were talking about how to promote the flag during Veterans Day, and it is expanded into Veterans Week. And I had a veteran come up to me, and she said, "Well, Pete, you can never have too many flags." And I appreciated that perspective. Um, and I wanted to make sure that when we are displaying our flag on campus, that we're doing it to the best of our ability. So if you see this flag on the side of the University Union, there are certain periods of the year where we display it during Veterans Week, during Memorial Day weekend, and then also during the 4th of July. And if you notice up top, we have two lights. Um, and so during the evening, those are sun censored. So the lights come on at dusk. And so it's proper respect to the flag and displaying it through the evening. If you notice, it's lifted off the ground. We ensure, uh, even during the windiest of days, as we are placing it on the side of the building and also removing it, that it does not touch the ground. Those are aspects of it. The third thing is the presentation of the orientation of the flag. When we're displaying it vertically, we ensure that the the blue field is always on the left-hand side as you see it. So we're always ensuring to the best of our ability that we're honoring the flag etiquette. So as you look at that, there's a lot of moving parts in that, and we want to ensure like I said, to the best of our ability, we're honoring the symbol of our flag itself, and honoring those who will be viewing it. Next slide, please. My apologies, this is a little bit blurry. I included this uh, just to share with you. There are a number of great resources out there when we're talking about displaying our flag at different events. Any formal event that we do, I work hard on making sure that we do have the flag at the ready and presented. Um, a couple quick things, just talked about the orientation of the flag. If it's displayed vertically, if it's displayed horizontally, again, you're going to want the blue field on the left-hand side. So there are some links in here with some additional resources and information talking about kind of, there are some, the VFW, American Legion, they do a great job on talking about flag etiquette and the appropriate representation and handling of the flag itself. This is a good, this flag etiquette image is in one of the links as a great reference that, where does the flag go? If the American flag is on a taller flagpole, that'll change its placement. If all of the flags, so if you have the US, state, and local flags, there's a specific order. And so it's left to right in prominence. And so this is a great resource that I thought would be helpful if you're ever wondering, if you're at an event and you see the flag, um, proper etiquette of it. Um, and so how I choose to honor our flag, honor the folks who have served, honor the families who have supported those who have served, is to, one, acknowledge appropriate etiquette within formal events. And also, I've come to understand that my experience, 99% of the time, whether wherever someone is in trying to display the flag, my experience has been they're really trying to find their way to show patriotism for our communities and our nation. And so I come from a place of understanding and appreciation first, and very, very, very seldom is someone trying to be disrespectful to the flag. The flag has created many incredible opportunities to learn about folks, their families, their communities. It has such rich history. Um, I am so grateful and feel such a level of appreciation for the community that I work with, because it is our flag and the stories that folks have, perspective of that flag. We have a flag in the center that one of our veterans carried in his rucksack through his entire deployment in Afghanistan, and shared incredible, just challenging and painful stories that he experienced. And we have that actual flag hanging as a display in our center to welcome folks into the VSC. And so it's a powerful image. It's an incredible image to learn about ourselves, learn about others, and learn about families and communities. And so um, that is really what I wanted to share this evening, and it truly has been an honor. Miss Bernadine, do you mind shifting to one last slide? Um, I can actually figure out a way to share this with folks, but it's broken down into two main areas. There's the flag etiquette. So great resources there to talk about just how the different organizations see uh, showing reverence to the flag, especially during events. And then a couple articles that I thought were really good to talk about the context of uh, what the flag acts, protection acts were, and then also just wearing flags on clothes and kind of the history of that. So I wanted to share that with y'all. And so that ends my formal piece of the presentation. Um,
Well, thank you so much, but we're not done because I have a
awesome.
list of questions
All
that,
right.
that only you can answer, and that's why I wanted you here this evening. And I'm going to first of all thank you again. I just cannot say enough that I knew the fact that I knew you were the ideal uh, U.S. citizen here in Flagstaff to share this information with us. And so, with that being said, if you do not mind, I have some questions that and things that questions that led us to you being here this evening for this presentation. So the first question, or maybe it's a comment, but when you mentioned in your presentation, one of the things that I know that endeared me to you years ago when we met, um, and I want to put it out there that at that time I was with the College of Business here, the Frankie College of Business, and worked very closely with an individual who is now one of our alums, Mr. Cody Johnson. And and I think along with you had come up with the idea or helped me because I thought about it, and because of my relationship in working with him, that we needed to do something as a university here to honor and acknowledge Veterans Day.
Yep.
And so I remember the first time that the flag flew proudly was on the side of the FCB building. And I got a lot of, I don't know if you ever knew, I got a lot of flack about that because of the lights at night. Um, it, 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 it kind of upset our dark sky citizens. But we maintained and
It was a
continued
beautiful
whatever.
image, wasn't it?
So I just wanted to put that out there. But and what I'm going to that leads me to, in your presentation you talked about the freedom of speech,
Right.
and I love the fact that you've always been a big proponent of that, and you shared that with us this evening. but one of the things I kind of want to touch on in our expressing our freedom of speech, we have to be ready to deal with what I call the clapback.
Mm.
Um, and so lighting up that flag against the Frankie College of Business, and having citizens, dark sky champions here who I respect, and I have few I consider very close acquaintances. Um, Dealing with the clapback on that. Can you just elaborate more? Maybe share what your thoughts of that. I'm saying yes, and you say it too. We do have freedom of speech, but in doing that, and I think now more than ever, where we are as a society right now, people do clap back.
Mhm.
Um, what say you to that?
Well, Mr. Bernadine, I was that was quite an image of on the side of the building. It was awesome. It was awesome. Um, and what an incredible experience for me to work with you and get to know you even more then. So it was a true blessing. For me, when I let's look at that as an example that there are going to be folks that have a very different opinion of it. And knowing that, what is the path forward? Um, and one of the things that in my current role that I've tried to explain to folks, and very fortunate at NAU that most folks are understanding, you might not agree with me, and that's okay, but we've been able to find some common ground. And so with this, for me, it's the reality of those lights are only on maybe on Frankie College of Business, for example. For that event, we had them maybe on 4 or 5 nights out of the year. And so letting folks know that this isn't about disrespecting you. This is about honoring others. And it's grounded in respect. And I understand where you're coming from. And my goal is not to be disrespectful to you. But here's our stance on this, and let's move through this. What that did in that conversation, even though it was maybe not very comfortable at the moment, in the moment, it did lead to when I showed the side of the building with the flag now, we have lights that shine down. And we actually worked with the dark skies folks to say, how do we move forward with this where yes, we are hearing you and definitely honoring where you're coming from. And we want to do this for all the right reasons. So we were able to find that happy medium where now the lights are shining down, they're on sensors, and it's a controlled venue where it looks great. We're honoring our veterans, and we're able to work with the folks at Dark Skies. So now when they see it as we're all coming together to do it right. So, um, yeah, sometimes it takes some definite work to get there because, especially with the flag, it's a very powerful image, and
It
we
is.
all have a lens about it. And so, how do we get to that space where are we all respecting each other as we're moving forward to a healthy solution? So, that's that particular example of how we kind of moved through that.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think now more than ever it is so important, to be able to come together as community
Yeah,
and work through it,
yeah,
and not, um, not use anger or frustration or irritation to lead to separation, um,
right.
of community. Another question that I have, that we want our viewers, again, we do this to educate, enlighten, to inform, and to inspire. So I just want to make sure that we are clear that so when a flag is posted in the evenings, no exceptions, it should always be lit. Is that correct?
That is the appropriate etiquette. Yes, and so um, it's not always easy to do, but shining a light on it is really it pays appropriate tribute to it.
So if you're flying the flag at home, it's posted like over your porch. There should be like a floodlight, like something, those lights that are commonly used during the holidays to like highlight holiday decorations on the house. But there should be that type of spotlight on the lawn or on the porch, however that flag is displayed, that clearly is focused on that flag. Is that correct?
That would be a great way to do it. Another way, a couple that I'm thinking offhand, if the flag is near like garage lights, uh,
Mm-hmm.
had
Mm-hmm.
folks have their lights on and it's illuminating the flag, and some folks are like they'll keep the light, turn the lights on at night. That's one way. There are also spotlights that are designed to go onto the actual flagpole. So you've got that up.
Right.
And so um, it's just a great way to really accentuate our flag itself. Um, and so I'm near a street light. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the lazy way of doing it. I've had wiring ready to go to give it its full spotlight, but two kids have kept me busy. So
So, and so if a citizen if citizen A is posting that flag, and there's not a spotlight, is that illegal or not? I mean, could a police officer or someone come by and ring the doorbell and say, "Hey, you're not posting your flag correctly, and that's against the law."
yeah,
What could happen? I mean, can that happen?
that's a great question, Miss Bernadine. The answer is no. There's no legal implications with that because when the Supreme Court ruled against the the Flag Protection Acts, uh, it really opened the door that however somebody treats the flag is however somebody treats the flag. They're not going to get penalized. Uh, there's there's not any legal or financial implications for that. It's just it shifted from it was the law, now it's etiquette to try to really do right by the flag. So um, it's one of those things where, and there's a number of folks that might just not know, and so it's a great opportunity to have a conversation.
So
Does that make sense, Miss Bernadine?
sounds like hmm,
Did that make sense, Miss Bernadine?
it did. And what I wanted to do to make sure that we're clarifying for our viewers, it sounds like this is a case of maybe legality as opposed to ethically or or right or morally.
Right.
It sounds like to me these are moral obligations that we as citizens should follow, um, as that we should follow to show true respect for the flag, which leads me to this question. A big question that we often bring up in our conversations talking about the Lived Black Experience Project. We see a lot of modifications of the flag.
Right.
We see, different colors that stand for different things: policemen, people, first responders. We see faces in the flags now, different types of images where the stars usually are, and then the flag sometimes has different colors, and there might be words that also are in place of the stars. What what are the implications of that? Is that legal, or is that or is it both illegal and disrespectful to our sacred flag?
Great question. It's not illegal. So it's legal to modify it. And so the legality of it is protected expression. Um, the ethics behind it or the respect toward it, that's the thing where I've had a lot of great conversations. Like, what do you see in that modified flag? And so it has given me an opportunity to talk through where are we landing on this, and for me it gives me a chance to learn and understand where folks are coming from. Do I
Mhm.
agree with that modification? uh, Depends on the modification and depends on their purpose. If they're disrespecting the military connected community, I don't support it. But they have the freedom to express it. And so to me,
So
when I,
there's that freedom of speech again.
yes, as much as I might personally be appalled by it, I the thing about it is they have the freedom to express that, and I have this freedom to say I have a dissenting opinion about it, and how do I support the broader community. And so
Right.
it's tough because it's a powerful, I mean, it's our image, and when it's modified, where are you coming from with that? I mean, I've I don't know if this will show up on camera, but we have done this, and if you can see, we've provided an NAU,
Oh,
and that is a modification of the flag. And
yeah.
over the years, as I've learned about it, I'm like, well, that can be seen as very disrespectful to some folks, even though the veteran community here look at that and they say, that is awesome. There's a connection to my school, my country. And so having conversations with veterans about here is my intention. Was I being disrespectful? Having conversations with my fellow citizens who have the opportunity to have an opinion about it. I think it's really that conversation of where are folks coming from with that, and creating out an opportunity to learn. But it's legal to modify the flag image.
Right. It's legal, and I think of what I hear you saying, and that's why we love to have these conversations, and I like to call them courageous conversations as opposed to difficult. um Sometimes, these flags, modified flags, do cause a division, or do cause a certain type of individual to feel a certain way. But correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm hearing you say, this very flag that was meant to unite us, because of freedom of speech, you can modify it, and it may cause division at times. Would that be? Yeah, yeah.
We have had to,
Another question, that this is another big one for the Live Black Experience Project. When we talk about the good old South, um, and I'm from, I moved here from Georgia, and so we know um, that there's that one other flag, the Confederate flag, if some of our viewers do not know. Well, there is nothing. It's not any big surprise. Cities and towns in Georgia still fly the Confederate flag alongside of Old Glory. Um, how do we address that?
That's a great question, Miss Bernadine, and it's a very difficult one, um, depending on where the flag is being flown. Um, I I think so. For me, um, I look at NAU as an organization that I'm supporting, and if I'm seeing multiple flags being flown with our American flag, uh, I have questions because what are we trying to do, and are we looking at flags that are bringing us together or pushing us apart? Um, Fortunately, I haven't had a lot of scenarios. It's been any flag that has been with the American flag has been either the state flag or the NAU flag. So there's been a lot of respect for that. When we start talking about interjecting um, flags that go down a path of what I call activism or stances that are dividing, I think that's a healthy conversation. And so we've had some. I think about our conversation that we had about that very flag on campus, and how do we support the students that are offended by it. Also, help folks know that, as offensive as that is, the incredible gift that we have for freedom of speech sometimes is very uncomfortable. And how do we move through that together? Um, and where are our voices of support uh, and opportunity? So it's a very tricky question. It lands with, in certain venues, freedom of speech to display it. But how do you know, when we talk about organization versus individual, is it an organization or is it an individual displaying that flag? So I know it's a gray, wishy-washy answer, but it's such a case by case scenario, you know.
So, but knowing what the Confederate flag truly stands for, is that really legal? I mean, if those two flags are being flown together, I get, and here again, going back to, I get it. We're talking about legality as opposed to what is morally or
Right.
ethically correct and what is proper etiquette. So are we saying when I go to Jackson, Georgia, and I see those two flags flying proudly together, is that legal or is that freedom of speech? And we, and I like to keep it real. Jackson, Georgia, has a reputation of being a certain type of place.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, in the skin that I'm in, um, that's like a warning sign to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I get the freedom of speech. I think what we're trying to answer. I know what we're trying to answer as the project is that legal, um, or is that just defiance of
And
who and what some of us are.
and Miss Bernadine, that is an awesome question. And full transparency, I'm not I'm not sure when it comes to, say, if it's at the state house. Are there laws in place in Georgia that are focused on keeping the American flag flying proudly on its own? Are there laws in place? And I don't know if there are, because if it was like at the state house, that's a representation of that's all of us. And so there's a voice from what I understand, to address it legally, if that's the case. I'm not 100% uh, sure of the implications of that. So I don't want to say it is legal or it isn't legal. It's a different context when it's at the state house, when it's representing all of us, versus an individual flying them separately because they have a particular stance. And so those are the two defining areas that I would say I'd have to do some research on. Uh, the individual
Would
right.
you be willing to do that and come back and let's talk about that? Because I think that's a big one. Um, it's and I've seen it sadly for me and personally because of my lived experience. There um 4 years ago was a truck. I never knew if it was a student or a community member. And maybe you have seen that truck that would drive through campus with both the Confederate flag and the US flag. I mean, the huge one, the ones that go up, should be up on a flagpole.
Mhm.
And they had it attached to the back of the truck and would ride around town. um, Here again, and just for clarity, because that's what we're talking about, that, correct me if I'm wrong, was clearly an expression, freedom of speech expression, but not proper use of the flag. Is that correct? Because I've learned something new this evening, or a new perspective.
Yeah,
What do we say about the huge flags flying from the back of pickup trucks?
yeah. So is it legal? Yes.
Right. Is it legal, or is that freedom of expression or freedom of speech?
It is legal. Now, if we're looking at it from the face of flag etiquette, um, the reality of it is, are these flags touching the ground, or is our flag, the American flag, touching the ground? That's not appropriate etiquette. Uh, a number of times for parades, folks will have the American flag on their vehicle. If it's suspended high enough, it's not touching the ground, it's being treated with respect. That could be proper etiquette in the moment for the celebration. But if you have a flag, an American flag in particular, on your vehicle, you're driving around, uh, you have it there overnight, no light on it, or it's touching the ground, or any kind of combination of it, it really is not appropriate etiquette, and for a number of people would be very disrespectful.
Right. So now that's another question. That touching the ground, that seems to be a big part of flag etiquette. That flag should not touch the ground under any circumstances, right?
Dive! Don't let it get on the ground.
And so if it should, what should we do, my friend? What do we do if that flag touches the ground?
Well, let me share with you one of the things that I've learned over the years. If it wasn't intentional, and it doesn't, it like it's okay, uh, as long as we're doing our best to ensure that it doesn't. I mean, uh, there are times, well, speaking for me, if I trip, if I fall, if the flag accidentally touches us, to address it as quickly as possible and with respect. Uh, if we're letting it touch the ground, don't think anything of it, then there's an issue of respect. But if it accidentally touches it in kind of that once in a blue moon, um, learn from it, we move forward, and that's okay. Um, there is also proper disposal of the flag. Um,
Yes.
and if you don't mind, I can share a little bit about that.
No, I was going to get to that. So I was going to, if something, that flag, something for not the right reasons, did touch the ground. And so now we realize we must dispose of that flag. What are we doing? What's the proper protocol for that?
So there are a couple different options. What I personally do is I bring the flag to the American Legion. They actually have a, a center where you can drop off the flag and they'll dispose of it properly. So they do a ceremony. There is actually a respectful burning of the flag when it's worn, and the American Legion knows how to do that. To that, uh, there is the burying of a flag that is a respectful gesture. Um, in Flagstaff with all the rocks.
Yeah,
That'd be a little bit challenging. But
yeah,
what I like to do, because I know I've worked with the folks over at the American Legion, and they're very, very obviously supportive of appropriate flag etiquette. I know it's in great hands. Um, and so, being in Flagstaff, it's easy for flags if you're flying it regularly that the wind will get to it and
yeah.
it'll get tethered. You know, there are a lot of it can get worn quickly, and so uh, the American Legion's great here in town.
So, just so, like, again, we like to educate, inform, and enlighten. So, anywhere in the United States, and I don't know of very many states and cities that do not have an American Legion club. They are there so you can walk in with your dirty, torn, and tattered flag, and they know, hey, this is a citizen coming in and we'll take care of that. Is that nationwide?
That if they don't do it there, I'm not a betting man, but I put a ton of money on they'll know exactly who to get it to. And the American Legion, I would say, start there. They're a great organization and very supportive. Um, if there's not an American Legion nearby, or there's a VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, they are great too. I take my flags to the American Legion just because I've had a wonderful experience. But those two organizations will help guide you. Uh, Giving them a call if you're not in Flagstaff and say, hey, I've got a worn flag. Where can I take this for a respectful disposal? Uh, I can't, I put a lot of money that they will know exactly where to
That
go.
they would know what to do. That's good to know. I never knew that. And so when individuals, I think some individuals view, we may have some community members, and I mean nation community members, who consider a dirty, torn, ripped up flag to be a sign of resilience. We won the war. This is a symbol. We're still standing. Again, it is not illegal to continue to fly that flag, but it is, I guess, disrespectful to most, because now that goes back to freedom of speech, freedom of expression.
Yeah. I guess it's, and I would say this, Miss Bernadine, it kind of depends. If it's a veteran who's flying that flag, who carried that flag during a conflict, and that's their symbol of remembrance of their commitment and our nation. Um, to me personally, I would say that if that strikes a chord of very respectful, because it's someone who really is saying yes, it's worn, it's ripped, and yet we're here. So it is the symbolism of it, and that's the incredible thing about our flag is that it tells a story to everyone, and it shares a story, and it's an opportunity to learn. So where I guess my approach to it is if something's out of the ordinary, it does give me a chance to learn a new insight on this individual and this family. So um,
Yeah.
that's kind of how that's my personal take on it. Um, but
Yeah. So
it's
in etiquette or protocol, it might be that flag might need to be retired and
yes,
put
ma'am.
out of its misery, so to speak.
Absolutely.
But I like that the fact that I think a lot of times we don't know the story. I do have to add the reality of some flags do give certain individuals um, a memory maybe that is not so good, but then a tattered, worn flag um, could have a story of a soldier who has survived in representing, fighting for their country. And that definitely is a symbol of endearment, of pride.
Yeah.
My last question, what about flag pins? Where are we? Is that kind of like wearing the t-shirt or the sweatshirt? But we see some politicians, or I don't know, just individuals who want they wear a flag pin.
Yeah.
Where are we with that?
Miss Bernadine, you got some great questions for me. I always appreciate our conversation. Keep me on my toes. Back to, is it legal? Yes. Is it ethical? I would say with the different roles that folks have served in, whether it be public service, it is pretty common for folks, politicians, uh, you know, congressmen and women, senators, president, vice president. It's pretty common that that is done. I think it gets back to most times it's presented in a point of unity that we're together and that we're trying to. That's how I take it. That when I see that, there's a pride in country, pride in our flag. Um, Now it depends on what the flag, what that pin looks like. Um, is it crisp? Is it well presented? Um, is it exuding a level of honor and respect? And then it typically lands well, at least with the community as I've worked with it. So, is it
Yeah.
according to the former laws that would have been illegal because of,
Oh,
but I mean, you think about the Arizona state license plates. We have an option for the flag image for one of our license plates. Uh, I think we're in this space where we have a choice as individuals to be respectful or not. And
yeah.
that personal choice and the freedom to be respectful or not. Um, I what I have found is they've led to some great conversations and insight in the richness of our nation and our communities and our families. And so um, I know legally, yes. Ethically, it's been pretty standard protocol. Um,
Yeah. And we don't have a flag police division at maybe yet, you know, that I would definitely sign you up as the leader of that. So just know that when that position opens up,
um,
I I'm putting my friend up at the top of the list to head that up. I and I as we come to a close on this discussion, um, it definitely, I wish that more Americans would err on the side of proper etiquette and protocol, because when I look at how our society is made up, we have so many beautiful, I don't want to call them rituals, but in a way they are practices.
Yeah.
um, you know, for instance, of to see the military, the different establishments in how they march and present and post that flag. Those are all such beautiful practices, and it exemplifies the love and respect and endearment that we all should have for our beloved country. um, I do think, and I'm getting some uh, messages. If I'm looking down, I'm looking at my phone from individuals who feel like there are too many flags,
Mm.
and and
There are a ton.
many different colors, and different organizations have a flag. But I think after how what you have shared with us this evening, it honestly, it may not be ideal. Um, in some instances, it's legal. In some, it's not. Um, and then hearing that, I guess it's the beauty of America, um, that we have the freedom to express ourselves. Um, and because of that, I think that is why this project is so important, that we can have a space to come in and talk about these things, um, and we get to walk away more informed. um, I like the flag just as I grew up knowing it. um, and I'm a Girl Scout, still a Girl Scout at 100 years old. And I like the pomp and circumstance of and that ceremony of how we post that flag. And I know here on campus, that Veterans Day event is still the top of my list as my favorite NAU or campus event, because it is beautiful to see those colors posted and flying high. But we have to remember, this is a country, although it may seem threatened right now, that we do have the freedom of speech. And again, I would just like to put out there, we have the freedom of speech, but at the same time, we have to be ready to receive the clapback.
Mhm.
And but the clapback should not be a opportunity to divide us, but rather an opportunity to learn, to share. Um, so what may be a tattered, torn flag to me that needs to be put out of its misery, thank you for reminding me this evening that to that soldier, that may have been like that flag to them might be what that blanket is to Linus, Charlie,
Right. Right.
right? And that was the something that kept them going through the battle. And so that is why it is so important that we have a space to share our stories, and that we be open to hearing stories of others before we jump to conclusions. And that is my takeaway this evening. But we would definitely like you to research that, because we have done a couple of discussions on the Confederate flag, the history of it.
Mhm.
But we would love to hear legally, the legal implications of that flag flying with Old Glory, and what that means legally in the South, because unfortunately we know what it means historically. And so, with that, I'm excited because that means we get to have you back as our guest.
Well, Ms. Bernadine, it has been truly a gift and an honor to be here with you and your guests. It's very humbling. So thank you for having me. And for you, I will do some research, ma'am.
Well, thank you so much. And it means a lot to have you here this evening, because we need to have more conversations like this, and I know there are many of us who still want to stand on the side of is what is proper, whether it's illegal or not. You know, if you can do it but you won't get caught, there's no one to really hold you to it. But I like the idea that that flag was created um, with a protocol, with etiquette, to ensure that it never loses its proper meaning, its original meaning. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say, and what you've shared with us this evening. So, with that being said, uh, listeners, viewers, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Um, this truly was an enlightening conversation, and one that we see that could have a part two, and we will be looking forward to that. And thank you so much, my dear friend and colleague. Thank you to all of our supporters, our viewers who have been with us for over 100 um, episodes.
That's good.
And so, with that being said, um, my prayer for us all as individuals, but most of all as a community, I wish us power and grace as we go forth. Thank you and good evening.